Thank you so much. Honorable ministers, governors of central banks, executive director of MEFMI, representatives of international organizations, MEFMI partners, distinguished participants. I am pleased to join you in today's 2021 Macroeconomic and Financial Management Institute of Eastern and Southern Africa, MEFMI Combined Forum. I would like to thank MEFMI's leadership for inviting me to this important forum that is taking place at a critical time when economies in the region and the world are facing long-standing challenges caused by COVID-19 pandemic. Distinguished participants, the growth path for most of our economies turned negative in 2020, accompanied by extensive loss of jobs and income losses. These losses cut across all countries and have had the biggest negative economic impact on many economies in Africa, leaving us with limited financial space to respond to the COVID-19 crisis, as well as provide the required public services. As we all know, debt levels on the continent have increased, with the debt to GDP rising from 60% prior to the pandemic to 70 to 75% in 2020. In sub-Saharan Africa, public debts increased by more than 66 percentage points in 2020. The interest payments reached about 20% of tax revenues, and in some countries exceeded 1/3 of their revenues. And some projections show that the financing needs for sub-Saharan African countries could be around 425 billion for 2021 to 2025. This makes it even more difficult and expensive for countries to create fiscal space necessary to deal with responses to COVID-19. Distinguished participants, in this challenging macroeconomic environment, the sub-Saharan Africa is projected to grow by 3.4% this year, from a contraction of negative 1.9 in 2020. This rebound is currently driven by easing pandemic containment measures, effective public health measures in global trade, among others. Distinguished participants, regarding Rwanda's economic performance, the country recorded a sustained average growth of 8% over the last 2 decades and 9.5% in 2019. However, like other countries, Rwanda's economy contracted in 2020 due to effects of COVID-19 pandemic. We registered the negative growth in 2020, mainly due to a restriction implemented since early 2020 to fight against COVID pandemic. The total public debt has increased due to an increase in health-related spending and a decline in tax revenues. To ensure positive and quick recovery, Rwanda implements several macroeconomic policy initiatives. The government of Rwanda put in place different initiatives and is currently implementing an economic recovery plan with a focus on recovering from the pandemic and strengthening the economic resilience for medium and long term. This plan is composed of 3 components: the Economic Recovery Fund, Manufacturing and Build to Recover program, as well as a social protection component. The Economic Recovery Fund was put in place to support various businesses most hit by pandemic so that they can survive and resume production and safeguard employment. The Manufacture and Build to Recover program targets to increase investment through provision of attractive incentives to investors to boost domestic production as well as to create a job for our population. Through monetary instruments, Rwanda's central bank continues to support private sector investment and growth. Both the policy rate and reserve requirements have been reduced and lending facilities to banks widened. This has been done to ensure there is a sufficient liquidity on the market to support private sector investment and doing business confidence. Fiscal instruments were also used to help the government provide assistance to affected production sectors and firms. This was done through a temporary tax cut, moratorium on debt repayment, and temporary credit lines. We also raised funds to cut for health-related spending and social protection support to vulnerable people, especially during lockdowns. Through gradual access to COVID-19 vaccine, Rwanda has been able to vaccinate 21% of our citizens above 18 so far, and that effort continues. As a result, the strict COVID preventive measures will continue to be lifted, and economic activities are now gradually reopening. The economic projections indicate that Rwanda's economy will recover by 5.1% this year and expected to return to pre-pandemic average growth trajectory of 8% by 2023. The fiscal deficit is projected to narrow to 7.8% of GDP in 2021 and to 7.2% in 2022 due to a planned fiscal consolidation strategy put in place in the fiscal year 2021-2022. In this strategy, we put more emphasis on the implementation of priority projects and the completion of the ongoing key projects. Our current economic projection rely on the planned rollout of COVID vaccines, which will trigger full opening of our economy and rebound in tourism and foreign direct investment. Our financial sector remains also capitalized and liquid following timely fiscal, monetary, and supervisory policy interventions that are supportive to maintain the pre-pandemic buffers. Distinguished participants, as a significant progress is registered toward the macroeconomic stabilization in our region during this pandemic, further strengthening of Pan-African collaboration is vital to unlock barriers affecting intra-Africa trades. In this regard, the implementation of African Continental Free Trade Area should be a priority to all our countries. As I conclude, let me emphasize that to achieve full and inclusive recovery, there is a need to forge strong and sustainable partnerships. Let us apply the lessons learned from COVID-19 to move faster on key reforms and investments that will revive our economies. I wish to once again thank the MEFMI leadership for organizing this important forum. I believe that our discussion today will translate into more actionable points to guide economies for effective and sustainable macroeconomic management. I thank you so much.